Let's give it up for Mr. Jack DuChene, our speaker tonight. Some of you know him. Let's get him on out here.
How are we doing? All right. Well, what are we going to talk about? I'm not even able to see you guys. So, there you go. I'm going to tell you a little story. We're going to start off with this little story. And this story happened 40 years ago. And it's led me to this moment to be on this stage. The last 20 years, I've spent the last 20 years doing what they would refer to as large group awareness training. Full weekends, graduates you've been through. And now we come to this moment. So the story starts 21 years old, this guy. And I was living in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I got married in January. This is around 1983. And I get married, and I move from Vegas up to Mount Charleston. Anybody heard of that place? No. Oh, yeah, right? Yeah, it's about 35 minutes outside of Vegas, and you could ski up there, and it's very cool. It's like going to Pine Top or something. So I move up there, and my wife and I get jobs at the lodge. And I'm working up there for about 4 months, and we're young, and we party. And that's what we were doing. One night, we were partying at the lodge, and for some reason, I kept driving from the cabin to the lodge and back, and which you weren't supposed to do because you're partying, but I did it. And about the third time I took that route, as I was leaving the lodge, the guy that was bartending sort of wanted my job, and he did something, maybe it was good for me. He called the police, and he said, hey, this guy's drinking and driving. Now, up there at the time in that lodge, the guy that owned the lodge was drinking and driving all over the place at that point. But for me, I didn't get the same treatment as that guy. As I turned the corner to come back to go to my cabin, there was two officers that I knew, Smack and Eichner, still remember them. And I was arrested and taken downtown into Vegas and arrested for a DUI. And then the next morning I went back up there and I was fired from the lodge. So at that time in my life, based on the way I was raised, which was by two alcoholics, one was a sociopath, that was my father, and the other one was an abusive person, that was my mother. I did what I thought you should do. I ran. So I didn't want to deal with the DUI or the police or anything, so I grabbed my wife and I said, let's go to Phoenix, Arizona, because that's where my family lived. And I called them and asked if, we could stay over there with them while we get on our feet, and they had an extra room. So now I'm moving in with my mother, father, 2 brothers, and sister. So about 2 weeks after we get there, my dad calls me into his little office, the sociopath guy. And he says, do you know where to get $200 because they're shutting the power off tomorrow? And this is around the end of May, beginning of June. Now, this was not unusual. In my upbringing, there was evictions, there was power turned off, gas, water, cars repoed. Like Dad would be leaving for work and he would return within 2 minutes and you're like, what happened? The car's gone. And so I was like, okay, I've come in on the tail end of things again. So somehow this is all crashing. Now, I panicked a little bit because I had only been married for 4 months. And I didn't think this woman would stay with me in an unair-conditioned house in Phoenix, Arizona in the beginning of June. So I didn't know what to do right away. And then I was thinking, the reason this is happening is because I'm sinning. That was my thought. Was not raised in religion at all. Actually, no politics, no religion, none of that. And at 18, to avoid homelessness, I ended up in a church And I ended up becoming one of those. Now, at this point, obviously from the DUI and all these things I'm doing something they would refer to as backsliding. So I figured, all right, the reason this is happening is because I'm being punished, because I'm sinning, and I need to go to church. So I opened the phone book. You remember those? Like that big. And I go to churches, and I'm looking for a Calvary Chapel, because that's where I went in Vegas. That's where it all started. So I look up, and there was a Calvary Chapel around the 17 in Glendale or Peoria or something. So I called them up and asked them, do you have a Wednesday night service? Because it was a Wednesday. In Vegas, they had Wednesday night services. And they said, yeah, we have a Wednesday night service. So I said, good, what time? 7 o'clock. I was like, all right. So I go to the service, and I have sort of an intention, and that is to ask for help. So I go into this church with her, and we get there right after the service starts. We got a couple seats, and they had a band, pretty good music. And they did some announcements, and then the pastor came out and he did his message. Then he got done with his message, and he said, okay, let's pray. So I bowed my head, and I was praying for 200, like if you got $200 you could float this way. I'd really appreciate that. Now, as he says good, and this is all in my head. I'm not like praying out loud or anything. I'm just in my head going, hey, if you could help me out. As the pastor says, okay, we'll see you Sunday, we're done. I remember standing up, and the first thought was, I'm not going to ask for help. And part of that was just, I already know what they're going to say. They're not giving you money. That's not going to happen. They're going to tell you to go to the state or go to a government agency or something and attend, and there's no time to do that. However, I had another thought. Well, at least I came to church, so I'm sure they're happy up there. Like, things will get better. I'll have to figure this out. So we turn around and we go to leave. And as I'm walking out, and I would say this church might have been about 150. It wasn't a massive mega church. It wasn't super small, maybe 150, 200 people. And as I'm walking out, somebody taps me on the shoulder. So I turn around, and there's a guy standing there. And he opens his Bible, and he says, what's your name? And I said, Jack. And he's writing it appeared to me he's writing it in the Bible. Then he goes, what's your last name? And I said, DuChene. And he said, spell that for me. So I said, D-U-C-H-E-N-E. And he said, okay. And the minute he got done spelling it, he pulled out a check for $200. And he said, God told me to give you that. Now, I understand. This happened to me. You could believe it or don't believe it. It really doesn't matter at all. But that moment happened, and I was stunned. And I fell back in a chair. And also, we're in 1983. So $200 today is probably around $600. That this guy, I don't know, somehow, I don't know how he got the information to bring or to come over to me and to write a check. And the check had already been pre-written, because once he spelled DuChene, he just popped it right out and handed it to me. So I fell into a seat, mouth gaping, staring at the check, and he flipped the chair around and he sat down and he said, that was to get your attention. And I said, okay, you got it. And then he says 3 things. He says, first off, you're going to do something very important in this world. I like that. I did. And I immediately thought, because that's how fast we think, I immediately thought, yes, I'm going to create the biggest Christian rock band in history. And I'm going to bring everybody to this church. And then he says this, and it has nothing to do with what you're thinking right now. which was weird. And you remember, I'm 21. I'm like, whoa. So I discount that. Like, oh, well, you got the first thing right. I get to do something great. Sure. Second thing, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, keep it quiet. Then he looks at me and he says, and you're going to go through 20 years of darkness before you do anything about it. Exactly. I'm sitting there like, whoa. Now, I don't say anything to him, but I can add fairly quickly, I'm 21. I'm a couple months away from turning 22. That would mean I'd be 41, almost 42. And in my mind, that meant frickin' old, like a grandpa. Like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? Why would I wait 20 years? You just gave me the check. This is a miracle. So I don't say anything to him because, hey, I got the check. So I figured he got the check right. He got the first part right. The other two parts, he must have got some wires crossed or whatever. Still not completely sure how I still am baffled how he would know to come over and do any of those things. And I will stay baffled because I think for a lot of people, and maybe a lot of you in the room here, if you went into a church and that happened to you, I would probably change your frickin' life. Like, hey, I mean, you would return, you would imagine, to the church and turn your life around or something, but I didn't. I know, it's hilarious. I didn't do that. As a matter of fact, I remember I was driving in Moon Valley. This is where we were living on like 7th Street in Coral Gables, right by Thunderbird. And I was in my 67 Cougar with a beer between my legs and a joint in my hand, listening to Def Leppard Pyromania. And it hit me. Like a week ago, this happens to you and you're just a piece of crap. Like, what's wrong with you? I don't know what was wrong. And as a matter of fact, sometimes I wondered, why the 20 years of darkness? Why do that part? And I guess whatever had caused all that to happen was probably intelligent enough to know how screwed up I was, and that this was going to take a 20-year run for me to recalibrate. So I don't actually change my life. I never walk back into that church again. I never see that guy again. And I start going through the 20 years. The first 10, those are years that I call the first 10 years of darkness or sheer ignorance. That's where I stayed locked in the programming that my parents and the environment I was in created, that identity, that all that created. I stayed locked in there like an ignorant person. Thought I knew everything, thought I had it figured out, and I stayed in it. I was raised a bigot, I stayed a bigot. I was jealous, I was insecure in every relationship. I cheated on every girl I went out with. I had no values, none of that stuff. And that went from that point of 21, almost turning 22, to 31, almost turning 32. At which case, somehow I'm led out of that religion and all the beliefs that have to go with it at 32. So then now at 32 also, I start getting into Tony Robbins. Anyone heard of this guy? Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, all these guys. I start reading all their books. So now I'm starting to lift out of the ignorance of being programmed by these two people that their life was a disaster. And I start to rise out of that. There's another challenge though. Through those 20s to 30s, I was a rock star. If we spelled star B-U-M, but still. So all I did was rock and roll, and I lived in Vegas. I would date cocktail waitresses. They make a lot of money, take care of you, let you drive the car, and do all that stuff. So now I'm like 31, 32. I'm starting to get empowered by Tony Robbins. And Wayne Dyer and Deepak, I'm starting to open my mind and find out, holy crap, you didn't know anything. You were completely ignorant. You didn't even have control of your own emotions. I get fired from jobs. I would ruin relationships. Now I start to get a grip, but there's a challenge that doesn't start hitting until that point. Rock and roll. What was the creed? The younger people don't know, do you? What was it? That was it. Well, the alcohol of drugs was starting to catch up at that point. See, that's a more slow, progressive thing. I wasn't into any of the other hard drugs, but just alcohol. So now that started to catch up. I started to go into binges. I started losing relationships, losing jobs over the drinking. I would disappear for 8 days. Nobody could find me. I'd get some sleazy rental in Vegas somewhere behind the stratosphere and just drink my brains out for 8 days until I ran out of money. Always did sales, commission only, so nobody could fire me. I'd run out of money. I'd have to go back out there and make more money, shaking and sweating in DTs. That went on. And then around 32 or 3, the first suicide attempt happens. Obviously, I wasn't that good at it. So that one goes by, and I don't think anything. I did my best. It just didn't work out. And then it gets worse and worse and worse. And then by 38, there's going to be the 4th suicide attempt. The last 3, though, just before I jump, seemed to be my thing, I would remember the guy with the check. And many times I didn't remember this guy with the check for years. I wouldn't even think about it. I didn't talk about this. I didn't go tell people. Why would I go tell them? What am I going to tell them? When I was 21, God said I was going to do something great. They'd be like, dude, you're an alcoholic. You're a loser. You know, so there was no reason to ever talk about this. There was no reason to ever tell anybody about this. So then at 38, this is the last suicide attempt. I drained my bank account in the slot machines or video poker. I drained my girlfriend's bank account. I had $6 left. I had been drinking for several days, and I was at the stratosphere. So I went up to the top of the stratosphere. It cost $6 to get up there. I got up to the top, and I looked around, and I saw the little rail that I could jump over. And I go, okay, that's it. I'm going to run, leap the rail, run off. That's it. I'm out of here. This is a nightmare. I'm not able to escape it. I'm not able to get out of this. And just before I go to jump, the dude with the check appears in my mind. And I go, my man, I'm 38. There's still 3 more years. If this is true. Like, I don't know if it's true or not, but this is where I'm at. That was the last suicide attempt. Somehow at that point I made peace that if this, at least wait to the 3 years and see if anything changes. So I come back down from the stratosphere. My girlfriend breaks up with me. I go through 3 more years of binges, disappearing on and off. And then on February 24th, the year that I'm 41 years old, and February 24th, somehow, I don't know what happened. Now, there was times I'd go home and not drink once in a while, and I didn't drink that day, and I was like, okay. But then it kept going. Then a year passed. And then a year and a half passed. And by then, things were different. I had created this whole weekend stuff I do, the whole seminar stuff, and all that was coming into play. Now, when that guy gave me the check, that was like the end of May or June, and I'm 41. The drinking and the nightmare stops in February when I'm 41, so it wasn't to the day. But when I celebrate my 42nd birthday, I'm free, and the 20 years are over. And they're gone. And the hell was lifted at that point. Now, we're going to talk about beliefs here in a moment. and we're going to consider whether we need those or not. There was 2 beliefs I made up about that guy in the check, and both of them were incorrect. The first belief, when he gave me the check, I needed to make sense of it because that's how that brain works. We got to figure things out. And I figured the reason that I was given that check was because I wasn't raised in religion. So when I went into church at 18, I didn't realize there was more than one religion. Did you guys? Yeah, there's a lot. I didn't know that. So as I start to find out, well, it's not just this religion. There's Mormons, and there's Jehovah's Witnesses, and there's Catholics, and there's Muslims, and okay. So I always sort of had a nagging little doubt in the back of my head, what if I'm in the wrong one? So the first belief I make up is about the check came to me to prove this was the right religion. But then 10 years later, I'm pulled out of the religion. False belief. I believed something that wasn't accurate and true because my brain made it up and I listened. Then I made up another one, and that was once we started doing the classes, the full weekends, and I watched the power of these classes transforming people's lives like it did mine. I started doing that work before the drinking stopped. So I knew how powerful it was. It can change an entire identity, a whole inner world. So then I made up, well, the check was about the classes. That was it. And I knew other people did them because I went through one. I went through something called Psi Seminar. They have Landmark Forum. There's a few of them. There's not a lot on the planet, but there's a few. And I thought, well, that guy was talking about these classes. That's why you're here. That's what you're going to do. But there's other companies doing it. The only thing that made us different was we were never about money, never. And we were never pushing people to bring us more people. I actually cared about the people. I came from hell. I recreated the whole thing, and now I cared to help other people. So that's what I figured for a while. Oh, it's the classes. That's what he was talking about. That's it. Then, COVID hits. Do you remember it? Yeah. So COVID hits. I don't know what's going on. I'm not into politics, not into world things. As a matter of fact, I had a friend before COVID. Very good friend. He did the work. Works for Lockheed, does stuff for the military, some other things. I started meeting with him. I thought he was going berserk, and this is before COVID, because he was telling me weird things, and he was getting very upset about it. He told me about some guy named Epstein. I'd never heard of this guy. I'm like, what, Epstein? What are you talking about? I mean, I remember Epstein from Welcome Back Carter, for you older people. It's the only Epstein I knew about. So he tells me that this guy's got an island and all this weird stuff's going on, and celebrities and politicians and all these people are going there. And he's going out of his mind. He's so angry about this. And I'm like attempting to calm him down. I'm like, dude, why would a celebrity or a politician or anybody risk their whole career doing? None of this made any sense to me. And he starts talking about weird things like the CDC and the WHO and the this and the... I'm like, dude, you're going to drive yourself insane. Like, these are conspiracies or something, man. What are you doing? Well, then COVID hits. As a matter of fact, after all this stuff and COVID happened and all this stuff started coming out and I started figuring out what was going on, he did Facebook me one day and said, hey, buddy, who first told you about this? And I was like, come on, man. It was you. So then I'm sitting in COVID, and here's the thing. At this point, I have the seminar company, which is large group awareness training. What weren't we allowed to do in COVID? Right. So that shuts down. 5 months before COVID, for $100,000, me and my partner bought the Phoenix Metro Chamber of Commerce, a networking group. So our lunches were 65, 80 people, 100 people. And what happened there? Shut down. So then I sat there and I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's real. I don't know. So I'll stay in the house, I guess, whatever. And I'm sitting there for a little while. But then I have time. I have time to start really digging. What's going on here? What's going on in this world? This was like a wake up. Like, what the hell is going on here? And some things started not making sense. Obviously, I understood the little stores were all shut down, but the big corps could be open. I figured, yeah, well, that's the way that is. Really, when the restaurants opened that's when I said, okay, I'm going to find out more about what's going on here for us. Why are we struggling and suffering so much? Because the restaurant thing, a 5-year-old could have figured out that was incredibly weird to walk into a restaurant and then with a mask and then sit down and you're safe to take it off and then put it on to go to the bathroom. I'm like, this isn't making any sense, because in all of this stuff I've done, it creates infinite intelligence, like common sense, like critical thinking. And none of that stuff makes any sense. Why? How would you do that? If you really wanted to stop a spread of something, tell everyone to get a couple weeks of food and everyone's got to stay in their house. It has no way to transmit to the next person. What's going on? Then I had friends like my friends over here from Minnesota, where they got, yoga studios and kickboxing studios in these, mall areas, and they start noticing that they're not allowed to open, the gyms aren't allowed to open, but the smoke shops opened, the liquor stores open, and the strip clubs open, but not the healthy stuff. So then I start looking into it. Now, whether you did or not is irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. If you know there are things going on in your world that aren't working, or you don't, is okay. It really doesn't matter. The thing that happened 40 years ago happened. So if I was going to do anything in this world, in this realm, that was going to impact it, it would have to do with information. That's it. What else is there going to be? So now I'm going to give you the information that has come in the last couple of years since I started to look. So then it was more clear that the world, the way it is now, the way it's run now, and who's running your world, and where you sit in it, is going to change. There's no need for this any longer. Every animal, most of them anyway, in the wild, die to get food. They die to get water. They go up to the pond to get some water to live, and an alligator pulls them in. They're trying to eat, they're getting eaten. We have figured out this. There is plenty of food, there is plenty of water. There's plenty of food that isn't poisoned. And there's plenty of water. There is no need for this any longer. There are no need for movies to come out about how your children are being sex trafficked and all this nonsense going on. There's no sense in this any longer. We figured out the food, we figured out the water. You figured out how to control the temperature in the buildings. You don't even have to sweat out there. What the hell are the wars going on for? Why is that stuff going on anymore? And who's going to change it? One man in a position? No. So the information to share with you tonight starts with belief, because that's the tool. So the first thing is, what is a belief? Let's go over that. A belief. Hello? Answer that. All right, a belief. We know what they are, what they're called. I've been asking people for, 19 years now in the classes, what is a belief? Nobody had the answer to that question. They had what a belief does. A belief is something you think over and over again. A belief is something you think is true, Here it is. First powerful piece of information. A belief is an agreement with information, is what a belief is. And the information doesn't need to be true. So let me give you an example. There's a being who's omnipresent and can see all people all the time. Day and night, 24 hours a day. Everybody at the same time. And this being has a tally sheet with the name of each individual on the top and a line down the middle and good and bad on the two sides. And if you do something good, you get a tally. That was good. If you do something bad, you get, what's that about? And you get a little bad tally. And then on Judgment Day, you're rewarded or you're punished. So who am I talking about? Santa Claus, right? See, now think about it. You're a child. You don't know who Santa is. You don't know anything about Santa. You don't have the even the capability of putting that concept together, but eventually you're going to. So as a child, you're going to get information. Santa is sort of heavy, wears a red suit, has a white beard, lives in the North Pole, makes toys for all the kids. And I'll be honest with you, back when I was a kid and he was making toys, they were like these little wooden trains and all that. So I guess today when you're telling your kids this, he's making Xboxes and phones and all that up there. But he's got all that, and he's got little people making all these little toys for everybody. And he's got a wife, and then he loads up all the toys into a sled, and then these reindeer pull him into the sky, and then he's going to deliver all these toys in one evening. How many of you believed it? Yeah. All right, so the minute you believed it, you said, I believe in Santa Claus, then Santa Claus became part of your reality and part of your identity. Became part of your whole gig, your whole life. However, it was a lie. It wasn't true. So, I guess no problem, right? It's simple. It's a little fun thing to do. But there was a difference between Santa. There was a tooth fairy. Remember that? You get I would get a quarter. I've heard they're giving out paper now. 2s and 5s and all that. So I'd get a quarter, but the tooth fairy had no inherent power. She just seemed to leave you that. She just needed teeth, and that's all she wanted, and she left you some money, and she went on her merry little way. The Easter Bunny, not a lot of power there either. Just here's some hid eggs, some chocolate, little statues of him. I like the ones solid, not the hollow ones. That was a ripoff. And but Santa Claus was different. Santa Claus had power. Santa Claus could see what you were doing. He was monitoring your every move. He was judging whether you were good or bad, and that was good. So in my house, around November, we would start hearing, if you guys don't clean your room, Santa's not going to bring you the bike, the glove, the debt, and then we'd become afraid. We would be afraid, and it was a lie. It was a lie. It wasn't even true, but here we are afraid. And we were afraid all the way until right after we opened the presents on December 25th. Then we went right back to our old selves again until next year. Then when I was around 8, I was at school, and I was talking to some kids about seeing Santa Claus that weekend because he tours in the off days, sort of like Zeppelin, like that. But he tours in malls. So I said, yeah, I went to the mall and I saw Santa Claus, and these older kids were there, and they're like, what, are you stupid? And they started making fun of me because I believed in Santa Claus. So I went home and I told my mom, this is awful. These kids teased me. They said there's no Santa Claus. And she said, well, I need to talk to you. So she pulled me in the other room because I had 3 younger siblings. And she said, okay, there's no Santa Claus. it's me and your dad. We're giving you the presents, but you need to keep up. Don't tell your brothers and sisters. They still had years of manipulation left over here. So I was like, all right, I don't want to get whooped, so I won't tell anything to them. But I do remember having a thought when she said Santa wasn't real. And that was, you've been lying to me, and when I lie, I get whipped with a belt. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to get whipped with a belt. But that was the reality of it. So when we believe a lie, we give our power to the lie. Once I knew there was no Santa, I regained all my power from the lie. Because the next Christmas, when they were saying clean up your toys and all that, I'm like, yeah, right. Then I get into this work and I start to consider, how many lies do I believe? How many lies about myself? How many lies about you guys? How many lies about this world? How many lies about a creator or no creator or whatever that gig is? How many do I believe? So then I got to the place where I started to investigating, why do we need any beliefs, especially during COVID? This was the first time I saw live in front of me that I was paying attention to people getting pitted against other people over beliefs. Now, it's always been going on. Wars, all the stuff that's been going on. But now it became more like right here. So the beliefs are used to divide. They're used to separate. They're a tool. Because once we believe something, it filters everything through it. So do we need them? It's pretty heavy. Do we need them? So for the last couple of years, when the classes go out to lunch on Saturday, their mission is to find a belief that we need to exist here and create here. Nobody's got one yet that you need. So there is an insect, it's a flea. It can jump higher than any other insect, about 3 feet compared to its height. But if you take the flea and you put it in a jar and you put the lid on the jar, the flea will jump up and it'll keep hitting the lid of the jar. And then after a while, it won't jump high enough to hit the lid any longer because it hurts, I guess. I'm not a flea. And then after a while, you can take the lid off the jar and the flea won't jump high enough to get out of the jar. So for the flea in the jar, the lid is the limitation. For the creator's it's belief. See, when you take on a belief, everything shuts. It limits, pulls down. So what are we going to do if we don't believe things? Almost every argument we have with another person is simply, you believe something different than me. What would be more powerful than a belief? Because if I take on a belief, it's going to limit me at some level. And then the word came out, possibility. Interesting. Possibility as opposed to a belief. Why? Why a possibility instead of a belief? Because a possibility does not put the lid on the jar. A possibility doesn't limit you. You either know something or you don't. A belief is an agreement with information that you have been told by other people, or you read it or whatever, and even the beliefs you make up from experience. So let's say you're a woman and you go out, you fall in love with the first guy, he cheats on you. Then you get another guy, he cheats on you. You could form a belief that says, well, no, those beliefs came because these guys cheated, so my new belief is men are pigs, or I cannot trust men, or whatever you do. The reason that we know beliefs are the agreement with information is if you decided that off of that happening, doesn't mean everybody else would at all. So even everything that happens in your life and every experience is filtered through the beliefs that are already in there that you did not choose, most of them. They were programmed into you between 0 and 8. 80% of it was all set in there to create your identity. So when we let go of belief and we deal with knowings, knowings are from experience. Belief is the least level of certainty. Belief is the least level of certainty. Experience is the highest level. Because then you know. So in 2020 of COVID, there was a city up in the downtown area of Seattle. If anyone remembers this. They shut down a part of the downtown area and they called it Chaz. I thought that was a cool name. Chaz. And if you listen to this stream of information coming from your sources and your news sources, which by the way, the news, when I grew up, it was 6 in the morning, about a half hour, maybe at noon in a big enough city, midday report. And then at night about 6 o'clock for a half hour. They started with the most horrible things that have happened in the world, and then they went to any horrible things that might have happened in your city, and then on to the weather and the news and the sports or whatever. That all changed. This is 24 hours of opinions and scripts and all this other stuff. But I'm watching this stream of information that's telling me that Chaz is the summer of love. Okay. Like 1969. I was just a little teeny child at that point. But okay, I remember hearing about it. Flowers in the hair. Summer of love. This stream of information over here is saying it's a frickin' riot. And they're throwing Molotov cocktails and they're burning things down and somebody's been robbed and somebody's been raped and someone's been murdered now. So if I'm sitting in Phoenix, Arizona with you and we're at lunch and he's watching that stream of information and I'm watching that stream and this conversation comes up and we start to discuss it, then we're going to probably start arguing. By the time we leave, I think he's an idiot. He thinks I'm a moron. He thinks I'm a conspiracy theory. I think he's a lunatic. I think he's gullible. He's been whatever. So then we argue about it and we leave. We don't even want to talk to each other anymore. And then I tell you about it. And then you tell her about me and I tell her. Now here's the problem. We don't know anything. We have no knowing of anything. We are only agreeing to information from sources that we don't even know they're trustworthy, not trustworthy. We just been programmed to believe. So we don't have anything. So how would we get a knowing? How would we get a knowing of this Chaz incident? How? Yes. Instead of fighting, I'd be like, dude, you want to get on a plane? You want to take a ride? Then we'll find out, and then we'll have a knowing, and knowing is power. Knowing is power. Beliefs are weak, easily manipulated. That's how easy it is to manipulate the masses. Get them to believe things. Just get them to believe. So then you just get into the knowing part. Okay, what do I know? I don't know. What do we know? We know we know we need oxygen in these human vessels. We need oxygen, we need water, we need calories, we need to eliminate waste, and we need to get some rest. And then you probably have other knowings, like this band's gonna play. I know how to write music. I know how to play the guitar. I know how to sing. And all of you know things. And those are your knowings. You're like, I know this. love, whatever it is. If you start to examine the possibility of removing beliefs and standing on your knowings, everything else is possible. Here's what happens. Here's what you do with that. Anybody comes up to you, they could tell you, any religion could come up to you and explain their religion. And you could say it's possible. Because how do you know? You don't. So you go, it's possible. Possibilities don't put the lid on the jar. Possibilities don't limit you. They're just possible. Knowings are your power. So if you move into, now here's probably the greatest knowing, whether you know it or not, but it's a knowing. And that is you, them out there, we are all creators here. Now that doesn't mean we created it all, not that. Like we're mini creators. But we're all creators if you haven't noticed. How do we know we're creators? How do we know this? Well, consider what you're sitting on and consider where did it come from. And I don't mean that particular seat. I mean the first chair. How does it start? It starts in an invisible place. Your mind, you have a vision, you see something, you think about it, you keep focusing on it, you start taking action, and then boom, manifest into actual reality will be a chair. That is a creator. You've created your entire life all the way up to this point. Some of you on total default, meaning I'm just creating based off what my parents told me, based on what I've been through. This is all I know. I don't know anything else, and you never ventured beyond that. And some of you know you're creating. Look at what we've created. The whole world out there. Look at it. We can have any world we want. We created all of it. This microphone, the stage, the lights, the equipment, the music. Music is creation. We're like mini creators. And I would venture to say that I don't know if there is a God or gods or other beings or whatever, but I would lean to the fact, based on that guy giving me the check, that some intelligence that brought me to this place exist. And I'm a little reflection of that, creating in this world. And so are you. It's the most powerful knowing we can stand on. I create. Whatever. And you might be happy with your creations. You may not. I created the alcoholic. I've created this guy. Where is our identity? Our identities are created. They're not actually real things. They're things we like. They're like your body. It's like I have a body to get around. I have a body to experience things here. I have an identity. It's like my body. It's not actually me, but I'm using it here so that I can be in relationships, so I can experience love, suffering, ecstasy, pain. So I have an identity that's been created. The first version I didn't create. My parents in the environment created the first version. But the identities aren't real. How do we know that? When my sister, a year older than me, was born, I've never met this girl. My father didn't want children. My mother was raised Catholic. She wasn't practicing, but she held on to the beliefs, and one of the beliefs was no Connors, no rubbers, whatever. So my father doesn't want children, and she won't let him use protection. And he's young, so whatever. He's going to do it. So then they had her. He convinced her to give that girl to another family at the hospital. So I want you to take yourself back to your birth. and maybe your parents were there. But let's say on that day, they did not raise you. They gave you to another couple from a different country. You would have went to with the other couple. They would have given you the name they want. They would have brought you up in whatever political, religious, or none of that, or whatever. And the experience in the culture would have shaped you. You would not exist. Your identity would not exist right now. Your physical body would totally exist right now with a completely different identity. So our identities aren't real. They're programmed in. Science has got like 5 areas of the brain that your identity is programmed into. But we think they're real. We fall into the illusion that they're real. They're not real. But we do own them and we do use them here, and they're nothing to be, they're great. The only reason and only thing to do with the identity is if there's parts of it that you don't like. Insecurity, diminishing yourself, addictions, anger, whatever, jealousy, and there's things like that going on in that identity, and you don't like that. Somehow that got programmed way back when you were little, and you can do something about that. So I realized that Jack DuChene, I didn't name myself Jack DuChene. My mother named me that after her alcoholic father who died in a gutter. My father's name was DuChene, and that was me. And I've recreated the entire inner world of this that sits inside this body. And I create. And so do you. And we all do. It's the most powerful knowing we have is creating. So how did the identities get created? How do beliefs? Beliefs are agreements with information. What is information? Language. The computer, it's ones and zeros. Anybody know computers in here? Anybody know how the ones and zeros are giving me my music and creating movies and fly? I have no freaking idea. I would think there'd be more numbers than just 2, and one's a 0. Language creates everything here. Without language, so here's a question. What is a rock without language? There's no answer. There's no language. So what is a rock without language? So if a dog is walking, does it think that's a nice rock? That's a beautiful rock? No. The rock is an agreement that we make. So somewhere, sometime, it wasn't none of us who did it. Somewhere, somehow, it was like, that's a rock. In China, they probably don't call it a rock. They have a different language. But who are you without language? No language, no identity. No language, no God. No language, no countries. There are no countries. We've made them up. They don't exist. There's no dog sitting in Canada going, I'm Canadian. And you know what? Countries for communication purposes are fine. Hey, where are you going? I'm going to Japan. I'm like, I got a visual. You're going to Japan. That's not a problem. Here's how beliefs work, though. What about if at a young age I'm taught to pledge allegiance to a certain country and I need to go die for the country? Here's the problem. The country isn't real. I'm dying for something that isn't real, and the people perpetrating the war are not going to go to war. More than likely, their children aren't going either. We have to snap the illusion. You're creators. We're creators. Why are we doing this now? Because there are forces in your world. They are poisoning food. There's greed. There's a lot of things going on in this world, and there's people working on it all the time. We are taking this to the world, on the world stage, to find those who want to create the collective consciousness to create a new world. And at every creation you have, if you know anything about creation, thought, action, word, you always want your target. This was going to be called Awaken the Masses. The message came in clear. That will never happen. They don't awaken. Most of them don't awaken. They'll just follow the loudest voice and the loudest thing that's going on. Collective consciousness, Hitler. Collective consciousness, Hitler, one man, one idea. He gets other people involved. They go with him. They go, go, go. Pretty soon, millions of people believe it, and they created an absolute hell. That's how much power collective consciousness has. Right now, there's some people on your planet that are trying to create a world a certain way, but it isn't benefiting you or me. So we are out to find those who are at the awakening point, to flip this. We have the water, we have the food, we control the air conditioning. There is no reason our children need to suffer any longer, or neither do we. And here's the thing, you got to have an end goal. What's the end goal? Where's the vision? What do I see there? I see simple. A world where the children come in and they're safe. Do you hear this? They come in and they're safe. Because their parents are emotionally intelligent. Addictions don't exist. We don't poison the children. We don't poison ourselves. We don't scream and beat the children. We don't put them in harm's way. And when I say safe, I don't mean safe like they fell out of a tree and broke their leg. That would happen. And there could be a tornado and someone could die. I don't mean safe that way. I mean the unnecessary suffering that the children go through, and then that was us at some point. We were the child. They used to tell me when I was a kid, they used to go, oh no, the children are our future. And then I grew up and I was like, well, here I am. And they're like, no, not you, those other kids. I was like, oh, damn it. And then it was my kid. And I was like, well, there he is. Now he's a full-grown adult. It's him, right? And they're like, no, not him, the other kids. No, it's us. Now. So, you can leave here tonight. My advice, stop beating yourself up at any level. Accept yourself and love yourself. Your identities are yours to play with. You have your body, and you can go do what you'd like. But if you're at the cusp of waking up, we don't need the world to wake up. We need a small portion of creators to wake up, to create a collective consciousness, to create that world where the children come in and they're safe and they're sacred. Sacred because so are you. You are a creator. We have been lied to. We have been manipulated. We have been held down. Even the term human, it's questionable. It's just a label anyway. Stand on the Creator. Look at your life and you'll see it. We create children. We create everything. Everything outside of nature. We've created it. Take that power in. You're powerful. I know. I've been through the hell. I've been the worst that you could be. I flipped it. Now, everything I'm telling you, a lot of you people in here have known me a long time. I don't walk around talking about this, do I? No. Some of you have seen me for years, 17, 18, 19 years. I don't push this on people. I don't boast about it. I don't walk around like I'm special. There's nothing special about it. I don't know why that guy showed up 40 years ago. I don't know why I went through the 20 years of darkness. I don't even know why I know what I know now. I'm a regular guy who's going to go over there in a minute and play music, and then I might go watch Family Guy later. I don't know. But I do know this. I have seen 10,000 people, and I've watched them transform from the worst things you could imagine into beautiful, powerful creators. And that means all of us can if we want. Thank you. Absolutely 100%. All right. Who wants to rock out? You guys want to rock it? You ready for some music? That's where we're going next. Okay. That's better. There you are. I was like, where the hell are they? Whoa. All right. Be patient for about a minute. Let me go put on that 6-string, whatever that is. I'll turn on a couple of buttons and get ready. We're going to rock you out. You guys have been great audience. Give yourselves a hand.